Casey Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're telling the stories of Kansas City nonprofits and the people behind them. Casey Cares is the intersection of the nonprofit and profit communities, making Kansas City a better place to live, work, and play. This Casey Cares segment was brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation, www.kauffman.org. I'm Ruth Baum Biggis. If you're a nonprofit leader, professional or lay, fundraising is on your mind. Being in the middle of the year, it's a great time to assess how your strategy is working to raise the needed funds to run a nonprofit. And if it's not, it's time for a tune-up. Here to discuss mid-year fundraising strategies, what it should include, and what you should avoid is Casey Cares Dr. Philanthropy, Jeffrey Byrne. Hi, Jeffrey. It's great to have you back.
Hi, Ruth. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great because I get to talk with you and we get to talk about mid-year. All right, we're in the middle of the year. What should people be looking at, talking about, being mindful of when it comes to fundraising?
Yeah. Well, I've thought about this, and when I was a director of development, 24 years ago, um, I didn't take the time I needed to during my time as director of development for the Harry S. Truman Presidential Museum or Library, or the YMCA of Greater Kansas City, or Stepping Stone, to sort of take a mid-year evaluation. I wish I had done that, because I feel like today we are so busy with all the different activities at work, at home, social media, all the emails, texts we get. It's overwhelming. But for a mid-year pause, I call it, I think that you should think about, number one, are the programs and initiatives that you're trying to get funded, are you raising money for them, and how are they doing? And I think that we've got to talk about programs and missions and not money. And I'm here to talk about fundraising, but it's for causes. And I think that the first thing that a director of development or a CEO needs to think about mid-year is, how are the programs and the initiatives that we have underway doing? And do they need a mid-year evaluation like we're going to be talking about in fundraising as well? So I don't think you can separate the two apart, but I think they really do come as one. So, I think it's like spring cleaning. We're still into spring, I think, until the 20th or 21st of this week. So I think that, it's going to take a few hours to just sit back and think about and get some reports. Get some reports from your director of finance or your chief financial officer, and look to see where you are currently through the end of June, 6/30, versus what your plan is. Number one, understand exactly what your situation is and what you have to go as well. That would create a baseline, I think, there, number one. I think number two, what you've got to do also is evaluate the strategies that you've had the last 6 months, whether those be your board giving, your staff giving, how are you doing on your major gifts? Are they coming in at the same percentage that you're requesting? Probably not. And if they are, you're not asking enough, obviously. So, I think you've got to think about that. Are we doing special events, and how did they work out? How is our social media plan and our communications plan overlapping and overlaying onto our fundraising initiatives? So, while I say I think you need to take a couple of hours to do that, is probably a couple of hours over a number of weeks that you probably need to think about this. This is your chance to, make a mid-year correction in case you're behind on some areas or you're ahead on some areas. Number one, if you're ahead in some areas, then keep the momentum going, because that area, perhaps major gifts, are going to be that will help maybe take care of some of the areas that have that aren't meeting the standards or the goals that you've set mid-year. So I think it's good to, take a pause and think about meeting with your board chair to determine how they're feeling mid-year. Take a pause, meet with your CEO, and have a higher level conversation than
Mhm.
just the day-to-day activities. And I think we get day-to-day all the time, and we don't think about what's up here. So I would say I would do that with my CEO. I would do that with my board chair. I would also do that with my fundraising chair or your development committee chair as well. So I think that that's really important. And then I think that you need to make some mid-year corrections or course corrections. Are we on? Did 100% of our board give? Do we have a staff campaign? And did 100% of our staff give by payroll deduction? What do we need to do between now and the end of the year, especially in the fourth quarter, the end of the third quarter and the fourth quarter, on preparing for major gifts and the dreaded special event? Uh, what do we need to do to improve upon the special event that we had the first 6 months of the year? Well, let's pull it apart. As they say in the military, they spend as much time preparing for a mission as they do on the backside of de um, of how did we do on the implementation of that. If they spend 3 hours on preparing for a mission, they're going to spend 3 hours on the downside about talking about how it went and what they can improve upon. I can promise you no nonprofit is doing that after every solicitation. We worry and we prepare for solicitations. We might talk to our CEO, we might talk to our volunteer, we help to prepare them with materials. We make the ask and we on to the next ask. So my question is, do your homework on the backside as you are on the front side.
One of the points you just brought up, I thought is interesting. You talk about staff giving. And I think for those who toil in the field and work for nonprofits, there is sometimes the idea that, well, I give plus what I am paid to do. So how do you convince, and mid-year is probably a good place to address that. How do you convince, or what do you do to address that in your workplace?
Well, I do agree with you, Ruth, that your gift of service is a gift itself, and it's the most important thing that a member of a nonprofit does. And we're so motivated by the causes we represent. We want to make sure that we're doing a good job for those. But I think that from a staff giving standpoint, what we set goals for are not monetary goals because most of our staffs are underpaid, frankly, and overworked. And therefore, what we look at is 100% participation. So we look at a participation rate versus a dollar raised rate. Now, that's not necessarily true for our board or for other parts of our development program. But I think from a staffing standpoint, we want to make sure that we have 100% participation. And that can be done very easily. That can be done through a payroll deduction. So, you deduct $83.33 a month from your check, and you just made $1,000 contribution in a year. And, if you start to divide that $83.33 by increments, you can see where, a $2 a month is $400, two no, it's $40. Sorry, I did not make, I was not a math major, as you can tell.
That's
But
okay.
I think from a staff giving standpoint, it's really important that you think about 100% participation, that you give the staff the easiest way to give is through payroll deduction. And you treat the staff just like you treat your donor who made a $100,000 gift. You thank them, you cultivate them, you you do some things during the year that you're going to do to cultivate them so that they don't feel like every year they just hear from you one time.
Let's take two scenarios. Let's take the scenario that you've taken a moment, you've looked at your where you're at in your fundraising, and let's say you're behind. What Dr. Philanthropy are the kind of first things that you can do? Is this a time to start something new? Is this time to tweak something? Is this, do we, chicken with our head cut off kind of a thing? What do you do?
Well, I think number one, you don't panic, Number two, I would look for an overlay of 2023 and 2022. So where are we compared to the last couple of years? Are we at the same place as we were the last couple of years? And did we make our goals that were set for us? So I don't think that you should panic. I think that you should drive the car responsibly in the fact that we need to look to make sure everyone's in the right seat in the car. Have we prepared everyone? Are we buckled up for a ride for the last 6 months of the year? Because the last 6 months of the year are probably going to be starting Labor Day through New Year's Day, the best time to do your fundraising. So what I would do is I would hope that you're on plan, that you are comparable to the last couple of years, and that you have a solid plan moving forward. If you don't, then I think then that you start to pull apart each program of fundraising that you are anticipating between now and the end of the year to determine what we can do to enhance that. What do we need to do if we do direct mail? What do we need to do to enhance our direct mail? Do we need to add another direct mail piece before the end of the year? Are we getting and evaluating our social media the right way? Is it impacting, and does it have a plan to coordinate with our fundraising so that our social media and awareness, and we're pushing out good messages about the time that people are thinking about the golf tournament or the special event, or that we are asking for a major gift? Are our foundations, the foundations that we have targeted for our fundraising, are they are we meeting the deadlines? Are we meeting the required information that's going to be required in the portal? Most foundations now have portals that you have
Right.
to enter to submit your application. So I think you have to look at literally every piece of what you're doing, your foundation pieces, your corporate pieces, your individuals and families, how those compare and put together in a major gift program. Are you doing push outs with direct mail, and then do you overlay that with an email and social media campaign as well? So there are a lot of different opportunities, but I think that a mid-year course evaluation and course correction takes time to do. And I frankly think that you, as a competent director of development, can do this on your own. I would then share it with my CEO, my board chair, and my development chair, so I get input and I get their ownership. Their ownership is actually protecting you, the director of development, because if they own what you want to do, then they own the end product. They own the process, and they own the end product and the benefits. Yeah, so I would make sure that others within my organization have looked at what I'm doing, have been participatory in thinking about changing some of the courses that we might need to change. Do we need to change timelines? Do we need to elongate them? Do we need to bring them back, shorten them? Our solicitations that we made in the first 6 months of the year, Are those cold now? We haven't heard from those individuals or foundations. If you haven't heard from, you made a solicitation and you haven't heard anything for 3 or 4 weeks, shame on you, because you should be out there proactively on a weekly basis interacting and making a move on that donor or prospect to bring him or her or that foundation to a conclusion and a response that hopefully is funding your request. Are you getting your request funded at 100% of the ask? Well, if you are, you're probably not asking enough. I volunteer on a board. I'm a board member of a nonprofit, and we have launched a capital campaign. The board I'm on, it's outside of Kansas City, so I can do that and provide my services. And I asked the executive director and the vice president of financial development the other day. We've raised 22 million on a goal of 116 million. Are we in are what are our solicitation requests that we're getting? What's the percent of the actual ask that we're making versus what we're getting? And they came back and told me that we're getting about 65% of what we ask. And I'm like, I think that's not a bad percentage, but it's good to know that if you ask for 100,000, then you're on average getting $65,000. Because if they came back and said that we're getting 100% of what we ask, then I would say you're not asking enough, because I do know that the ask that they made for $20 million was the right ask, and the $10 million gift they got from the donor was probably the right donation as well. So, it all averages out, but I think you need to know your numbers. I mean, because therefore you can explain that to the business people on your board, the business women and the businessmen on your board. You can help to make them understand the science of your fundraising plan versus the art of that ask then.
We're talking with Dr. Philanthropy, Jeffrey Byrne. We're talking about mid-year check-in on fundraising. You had mentioned, making sure the CEO, the board chair, et cetera, are involved. If you're lucky enough as a development director, you may wear both hats of CEO and development director, whatever, but to have staff or people that work with you, what's their role in this, tune-up?
I think that's an excellent question, Ruth. And their role is number one, to support you. Once the plan has been made, it's to support you. Do they need to go on calls with you? Do they need to intervene after the request is made to help push the donor toward a decision? That might be a telephone call from your CEO. It might be a handwritten note. It might be an email or a text. There are multiple ways today of dripping, I call it a drip, on your donor once those solicitations are made. So I would say each person in your orbit who has some type of support or role for you, you need to use accordingly and wisely. So, I think with our CEOs, hopefully they're going to be supportive, and they're going to be supportive of you, and they're going to want to be a partner. Give them one task a day, or one task every other day, that they can very specifically, that they can help you accomplish what you need to do. Don't do it all on your own. A lot of us are so control freaks that we feel like we've got to do it on our own. But you know what? We live in an environment of many others that can help us in our roles and responsibilities. And I would say we need to bring them to the table, and then we need to ask them. So whether that's your CEO or maybe as a program director, remember, fundraising is telling stories. So tell a story. And once you've made the solicitation, follow up with a story about, how a gift similar to what we asked you for, Ruth, impacted this organization on a positive way. So I think you can think about a number of different scenarios. I think that you should have, just like your solicitations, you should have a plan on how you're cultivating and moving once those solicitations are made. Because my experience has been that once, if you let a solicitation go more than a couple of weeks without recontacting them and letting them know that you're still around, that you're reemphasizing the request, you're giving them additional information, you're saying, "What can I do for you, Ruth, to help you make your decision?" You know, um, I think that those are all options that a director of development has, or a CEO has, who wears that fundraising hat.
We're in a kind of strange new era. We've come out of COVID. Things are moving along. People are returning to go to events, etc. However, funds that were made available during COVID are now ending. What, how should a development person approach that? I hear a little kind of quiet panic from a number of organizations that, were able to build up, they had demand, et cetera, and now that money has gone away, yet demand for services, whatever they are still there. So how do you deal with that without, getting more gray hair?
Well, I think that, public money has been very plentiful out of Washington, D.C., through our state legislatures, through our mayors and our county executives, to good causes, to support our causes and our country during this time period. I think now that I will say that most of the ARPA funds, the American Rescue Program, that those funds have to be obligated by December 31, 2024. So most all ARPA funding that has come from the government has to be obligated by the end of this calendar year. Then you have 2 years to utilize that money and to spend it. So, and I would say you want to do that sooner than later, because we don't know if a new administration changes hands and comes in. There is talk about they're going to try to claw back that money.
Mm.
So utilize it, and number one, get it appropriate, get the appropriation, but then utilize it and spend it for what its intended purpose is as quickly as possible, because you don't want that money being clawed back to Washington, D.C. I think the bigger question you ask is, those public dollars are going to evaporate now. And we knew that they would never be there forever. And that now that we have risen our programs and our budgets to a different level with the public dollars, now we have to look at how we're going to replace those. And I would hope that most smart CEOs have already been thinking about that for the last year, year and a half, and that they have some type of plan on how they have increased their overall capacity in both funding and philanthropy, both earned revenue and philanthropy. So hopefully that those have already been addressed. But if they aren't, you need to address them like yesterday.
We know from data that much of the giving, charitable giving, is done in that fourth quarter of the year. And I believe there are statistics that even say from like mid-November through the end of December, huge chunks of money is sent to nonprofits of various missions. What do you think that pattern will continue this year? We are in an election year. I know that always sends curveballs to everything, but you've been in this business for a few minutes. What do you see?
Well, I see that the economy remains, the stock market remains very positive. It's growing. It's setting all-time records on the Nasdaq or the Dow. I think you should be reporting that to your development committee and to your funders. That I think the economy will continue to be very positive through the end of the year. I think that that we have to plan for, we can't plan for a disaster. You just have to continue to think that things are going to go well and that we're going to be able to secure what we need for our projects. But I think that, going out and talking to your elected officials too. I don't think that, as we are talking to our donors and our funders in the private sector, we need to go out and talk to our elected officials. I know in many of the organizations that we're working with, Congress just announced each congressperson that is participating in congressionally directed earmarks, the old word earmarks, that most men, congresswomen, and senators have announced if they're participating in this program. They've announced over the last couple of weeks what organizations that they are requesting funding for, and very specifically through what committees and departments of our federal government. And it's very much incumbent upon us to continue talking to those elected officials, but more importantly, the people in their offices who have the day-to-day responsibilities of overseeing the request that the congressman, congresswoman, or United States senator has put forward. And so I would really encourage our listenership to, reach out to your elected official. See what you can do to help them. I know there's an individual here in Greater Kansas City that was very well known. Unfortunately, he passed away a number of years ago, but he would always tell me, he was a mentor of mine in politics, knew every Democrat and Republican there was on the local, state, and federal basis. Even presidents would come and visit him. And he would always say, don't ask them what they can do for you. Ask them what you can do for them. And I promise you that that is one way of expressing yourself, and it'll get their attention in a different way. So I think there are a lot of different activities that we can think about between now and the end of the year to impact the way our programs are looked at. I will say that I think there's good news to share about giving in 2023. But Ruth, I'd have to kill myself if I told you, because that's an embargoed.
Yes, it's not released yet, but we'll be bringing it to our listenership.
I know, and
I hear there are good things coming.
There are really good. There's some good news coming on June 24, and this program will be heard before, I believe, June 24. And then for those in Greater Kansas City, you're welcome to join us on June 28, Friday, June 28, with Dr. Una Osili, who is the Director of Research for the Lilly School of Philanthropy. She will be reporting the numbers here in Greater Kansas City.
And we'll be talking about those with Dr. Osili in an upcoming segment of KC Cares. Dr. Philanthropy, it sounds like the prescription is study, look at where you're at, check your numbers, just like if you go for a checkup on yourself, get your numbers, see what's going on, and then you can address it, but take the time to do it.
And I think you do have to take the time.
Well, we appreciate
I think you do, Ruth.
We appreciate you taking time to kind of give us that oomph and tell us to get in there. And as always, it's wonderful to have you and all your great expert advice.
Well, thank you, Ruth, and I'm glad that we were able to check in at mid-year. I hope that our listenership will take the time to think about what's gone on the last 6 months and to plan forward on the next 6 months, because we know that this time is very important. There's going to be a lull in the summer season anyway, and we all kick back and kickstart ourselves again at Labor Day. So what you need to do to prepare yourself between now and Labor Day to kick yourself back off for the end of the year is very important. And many of our friends are ending their fiscal year next week. So, they've already done this maybe 6 months ago for their fiscal year that might end June 30th. But for those who calendar year, you need to do this and think forward now.
Thank you for joining us. And thank you for joining us on KC Cares. We're Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're produced by Charitable Communications, which is also a nonprofit. This KC Cares segment was brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation, www.kaufman.org. And to be a guest on KC Cares, or if you'd like to underwrite our nonprofit bringing you these great shows, visit our website at kccaresonline.org and spread the love. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at KC Cares Radio and on Instagram at KC Cares Online. And don't forget, you can catch us on Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. on ESPN 1510 AM and 94.5 FM. Thank you for joining us on KC Cares.